Today we are diving into the national portion of the real estate exam to master one of the most frequently tested areas, which is the four primary types of listing agreements. Understanding the nuances between these contracts is essential because the exam will often present you with a scenario where a property is sold and you must determine which broker, if any, is entitled to a commission based on the specific language of their agreement. We start with the exclusive right to sell listing, which is the most common and the most protective for the real estate professional. In an exclusive right to sell agreement, the broker is designated as the sole agent and is guaranteed a commission regardless of who actually finds the buyer. Even if the seller goes out and finds a buyer on their own through a friend or a sign in the yard, the broker still gets paid the full commission. On the exam, this is classified as a bilateral executory contract because both parties have made promises to perform. The broker promises to use their best efforts to market the property, and the seller promises to pay the commission if a sale occurs during the listing period. Moving to the next type, we have the exclusive agency listing, which is the primary source of trick questions on the national exam. In an exclusive agency agreement, the seller hires only one broker to act as their exclusive agent, but the seller retains the right to sell the property themselves without owing a commission. This is a huge distinction. If the broker finds the buyer, the broker gets paid. However, if the seller is the one who finds the buyer, the broker receives nothing. The exam loves to test your ability to distinguish this from the exclusive right to sell by giving you a story about a seller who sells to their own cousin and then asking if the broker is owed money. If the contract was an exclusive agency, the answer is no. This is why we use the mnemonic. Right to sell means right to pay, to remember that the word right is what guarantees the broker's paycheck, even if the seller does the work. Then we have the open listing, which functions as a unilateral contract. In an open listing, the seller can hire as many different brokers as they want simultaneously. It is essentially a race where the only person who gets paid is the one who is the procuring cause of the sale. Procuring cause is a vital exam term referring to the person who started an uninterrupted chain of events that resulted in the closing. If a broker cannot prove they were the procuring cause in an open listing, they are not entitled to a commission. Furthermore, if the seller finds a buyer on their own in an open listing, they do not owe anyone a commission. Because the seller only pays if a broker performs, these are not bilateral promises, but rather a unilateral offer of a commission for a specific result. Finally, we must discuss the net listing, which is highly scrutinized and illegal in many jurisdictions due to the inherent conflict of interest. In a net listing, the seller specifies a net amount they want to receive from the sale, and the broker keeps any amount exceeding that figure as their commission. For example, if a seller says they want to net $500,000 and the broker sells the home for $550,000, the broker keeps $50,000. The exam will often ask which listing type is most likely to lead to a breach of fiduciary duty or is frowned upon by regulatory bodies. The answer is always the net listing because it encourages the broker to put their own financial interest above the seller's interest by not seeking the highest possible price for the client. To succeed on these questions, always look for whether the agreement is exclusive to one broker and whether the seller has retained the right to compete with the broker. Remember that all listing agreements are technically employment contracts between a principal and a broker and must have a definite termination date. Avoid the trap of thinking a listing can automatically renew. On the national exam, any listing that does not have a specific end date is often considered void or unenforceable. By focusing on who has the exclusive right and who is the procuring cause, you will be able to navigate any scenario the exam presents regarding listing commissions.